I'm aiming to put the lotus back into this tea light candle holder. I'm going to use this elaborate mold which has an inner circle and an outer tier of petals. For such a beautiful large mold, pouring a single resin mix feels like a wasted potential. The mold design encourages layering, so we are going to explore that technique for this piece. My goal is to create a layered color gradient, lighter in the center, gradually darker towards the outside, and finishing with a yellow center. My Lotus color palette will use this wonderful shimmery blue base, a lighter blue pigment, and darker indigo to add gradient to the petals, along with some white mica pigment. These golden caviar beads will create the golden yellow lotus center. With a little extra patience and effort, I promise the layered results will be worth it. Let's prepare our resin first. This mold is deeper than the previous casting, and I felt that a slow cure resin was my best bet at minimizing trapped bubbles. I also expect that with this slower resin, the gradient will be a little more subtle and the colors will blend more smoothly. I am using a 1:2 by weight mix for this project. I am going to slowly mix the resin until the streaks disappear and it runs clear, and then set it aside to degas. Before pouring, I'll also make sure that the mold is clean. I'll prepare the lightest blue resin pigment first. This will be the innermost, the lightest petal color. I'm pouring this mix into the mold carefully, making sure it flows along the center and stays within the innermost layer of petals. I'll be filling it up just below the level of the other petals. The inner petal volume was a little more than my initial mix, so I'll quickly make an additional batch. Since this is a slow cure resin, it doesn't matter if the consistency of the two blue mixes is slightly different. They will move around during the cure and eventually even out into a smooth gradient. Next, we create the base layer. This is the color between the lightest and the darkest shades, and it will comprise the bulk of our petals. This pigment is truly looking gorgeous. I hope it keeps its shimmer even after the pour. The next step is a bit intricate. It almost feels surgical and it may be a slight overkill that could blend over time. However, the thinking is that this filling will prevent the other resin colors from reaching the petal tips later. Especially when the entire mold is filled with epoxy and the pigments start their inevitable dance. The color difference at the tips is what will either make or break the layering approach that I am planning. Our second layer is done and now it's time for the darkest layer. We are using a really beautiful indigo blue color. Just look at that. I think if I had a choice, I would just sit and mix this color into buckets of epoxy all day. It is so therapeutic just to watch the pigments crumble and give away into the epoxy and become this beautiful velvety resin mix. Such a treat for the eyes. This will form the tip of our bottommost layer and will give this piece its classic blue lotusy feel. I'm almost done with all the petals. I'm hoping that this will work because I'm not really sure. With other blooms, the height is limited, so I have an idea of how the pigments will move. But here, the resin will have a lot of directions to move in. But for now, these two layers do seem to have their own identity. Now that the petals are done, I'm going to pour the resin into the mold in multiple layers. Starting from the base blue, then filling it with white and finally topping it with clear resin to create a gradient from darkest blue to light. Since this is a pigment, there is a chance of sedimentation. I'm hoping the sedimentation will happen more towards the center, which is why I'm pouring this from the center. So even if the central walls become lighter, that can only work in favor of the overall gradient. From dark blue at the tip to white at the edge of the center. The gradient is already looking fantastic. This pigment is very rich and is contrasting beautifully with the lighter blue. To finish the layering, I'll add one final round of white to fill it up and finally top it with clear resin. This final layer serves two purposes. It gently pushes the remaining white pigment resin into the mold, completing the petals, and secondly, this layer will become the base in which I'm going to lay the caviar beads. These beads will form the center of the flower, mimicking the gorgeous yellow center of a real blue lotus. You can already see the gradient in the leaf petals. I think this is looking fantastic. I'm spreading the caviar beads out to cover the whole inner circle, being careful not to push them over the edge. If they go over, I'm afraid the project will go over the edge too because they'll sink all the way and show up at the tip of the petals, which would completely ruin the look. I have pushed the beads right to the edge, as far as I can go without letting them spill into the petals. My job is done. I'm going to let this cure for a day or two. I have a feeling that this piece is going to look even better from the back than the front because placing a candle in the front will hide the center. Our resin has cured. Due to degassing and the slight shrinking of the resin during the curing process, the volume has decreased and there is a little gap at the top. This is perfect. It allows me to add a final layer of clear resin to seal the bottom. This will properly seal the caviar beads and complete the entire gradient look. Look at this, it's looking so good. You can really see the semblance of that blue lotus coming through. The gradient of the different blues in the petals and the central yellow is looking fabulous. I love how the gradient turned out. The idea of putting the darker colors towards the edge truly paid off, as this small detail decisively puts the lotus back into the mold. The caviar beads are beautiful, and the fact that the resin shrank at the end, forcing the top up, was a blessing. That final clear layer completely elevates the piece. The elevation is fantastic. While this is a functional candle holder, it's also a resin sculpture and a piece of art that celebrates the play of pigments. It looks even better from the back. Is it weird that I think so? I can see the entire gradient moving from dark blue to white to yellow here. And look at the translucent bottom. That is looking magical. This could easily be fitted with a light and hung from the ceiling or something. I am so pleased with this project. I was not sure if it would work, but it did. I do feel it would have been nice to have a little more gradient, and now that I have worked on this, I'm thinking the central whorl could have been lighter or whiter. I could probably have skipped the lightest blue and just gone ahead with the indigo, the shimmery blue and white. I have plans to make a pink lily version using 3 shades, but that's for another day. This was my take on this candle holder, which is a beautiful piece of standalone resin art by itself. And it floats. You don't even have to add a candle to it. It looks pretty just by itself. Hope this was fun, happy crafting, and have a wonderful day.